Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome. It is Thursday, the 22nd. You join myself, Ryan, and Michael, for the Morning Blast, which is your very much untamed market podcast. We really don't hold ourselves too seriously. And, as we said before, and always, we cater to all levels of brow. You can be the judge of who caters to who. As usual, nothing discussed on this podcast is trading or investment advice. We do not apologise for swearing. If you don't like it, fuck off. Actually, Michael, before we get in, I wouldn't mind starting with a little morning blast PSA, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. Let me say good morning to everyone first of all, and a very happy Thursday. We have just one more trading day to go in the week, but go on. Does it involve Nat Gas by any chance?
It does, mate. It does. Basically,
Be fucking clear.
Yes. The official line is stay fucking clear. Unless you've traded it for eons, do not trade it, because you can very easily in these conditions call the direction right, but still have your account ripped from you like a candy from a baby. Not only have we got extreme weather volatility and, what's Nat Gas up? Well, the front month, the futures is up, Feb futures is up like 60 odd % in a few days. But as I said, Feb futures is the one that's moving, and that is pretty much rolled already. So it's actually March should be the contract that people would be trading in any other times. But there's a lot of physical hedges that are being forced to hedge with the front month, etc. And especially coming into Friday, which is when all these storms are likely to really hit and grab America by the short and curlies. Problem is, there's a lot of physical guys for like weekend pricing stuff that will be forced to hedge in the Fed future. So it could get fucking leery. And even if you do know what you're doing, you're at serious risk of having your eyeballs ripped out. So please do yourself a favor. Just stay the fuck away. Sit in the dugout, watch it. Take it all in. Enjoy the excitement. But just please stay away. I'm actually genuinely surprised that spread betting companies or retail brokers haven't taken it off the list already. Quite frankly.
I can't tell you too much on that one, but watch this space.
Okay, right. Yep, there you go. I was thinking this morning. I was like, this is crazy that they've not taken it off. And Nat Gas is one of the few things I actually know about, and it is a very short list. So, please learn from my previous mistakes and just my experience on that one. But anyway, Michael, let's give an update from Clive, I guess.
Well, yeah, indeed. I mean, we're not going to spend the whole time talking about Nat Gas because we haven't got a clue.
No, exactly. Right, so market update and levels to watch from Clive Lambert, our dear friend over at Futures Techs. Sorry, some kind of big lorry or something's driving past. If you can hear that in the background, I apologise. I'm not doing this from a lay-by, by the way. Those days are long gone. No. S&P, that rallied to late high on 69.45 yesterday, putting some distance on the 68.41 Fibonacci level we've been watching lately. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Me and Michael did say to close your eyes and buy the dip yesterday, but we won't do a victory lap because we will get egg on our face if we do. DAX, that rallied from a low of 24,455 for those keeping count, and we'll keep an eye on 24,823 to 847 on dips today. Eurostoxx 50, that also bounced neatly. That's now trading up. Also, the next support is 5,925, and that is a Marubozu support.
We haven't had one of those for a while.
We haven't had one of those for a while. The FTSE futures can get back to thinking about making fresh all-time highs once more. 10,262.5 is the current all-time high. That half means a lot, especially when you're 5'7.5" like me. Not my words, that's according to the Met Police. Bund futures sold off, leaving a red candle with Marubozu resistance at 127.87. T-notes, they rallied back to the 111.21 level cited yesterday, but no more. Dollar yen, green overnight, so eyeing the recent high of 159.45. Bitcoin rallied a bit, put some distance on big support at 84,000. Gold, the yellow metal, got up to 4,891 and won. I'm not sure what it means, but and found some opposite trade. Goldman's did come out. I think Goldman's new target now is
54 by year end.
5,400. There you go. Silver didn't make a new all-time high, but a dip to spot 15 found buyers, so all still well there. Pretty mixed bag around the traps in the rest of metals complex. Platinum saw a nice dip, finding buyers overnight. Moving over to oil, WTI and Brent, that had a good day yesterday. Both are still a bit messy and not offering any solid clarity chart-wise. Again, I remain bullish. Henry Hub, do stay away from this. Bid again overnight after what must have been a record up day yesterday. Taken to some key levels on the weekly charts. 5.5, 5.635. If you are looking, do not look to trade technicals on front month Nat Gas. Just don't.
Actually, don't trade anything.
Well, don't trade anything really. Right. EU carbon markets rallied yesterday and has gapped up this morning. Dutch gas, so the European gas benchmark, rallied strongly yesterday and spiked to a key level of resistance around 42 even on the big figure. In early trade today, where we found some sellers. Again, that will be one to watch what we said yesterday about potentially supplies from the US being diverted to plug this gap that they could be having over the weekend. So one to keep an eye on this side of the pond in that gas market. Finally, from Clive, corn and wheat posted damp sessions yesterday, but soybeans rallied and is once again eyeing the 1,071 level that Clive mentioned last week. A move above here gives a buy signal. Yes, that's it from Clive. Thank you very much, Clive. What is going on, or what happened yesterday, my friend? Well, I know what happened, but you tell us what happened, my dear friend.
Well, everything's all right with the world again, isn't it? Stocks are green, the market's rallying, and Trump has U-turned on his latest tariff threat. We will cover this in a bit more detail in a second when we debate what has happened and what may come next. But for those of you who have been living under a rock for the last 12 hours or so, about 7:30 London time yesterday evening, President Trump putting out a post on Truth Social, noting that he has had a very productive meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and that as a result of that meeting, the two have formed, quote, a framework of a future deal, not only on Greenland, but the entire Arctic region. Specifics of that deal are very thin on the ground. In fact, they're so thin on the ground that you can barely see them because they don't seem to exist. But nonetheless, that was enough for Trump to pull back on his threat of imposing tariffs on various European countries, with that 10% levy on 8 European nations now not going into effect on the 1st of February, as had previously been threatened. Once again, it's escalate to de-escalate. It's the art of the deal. It's take a maximalist position for some concessions and then get the job done.
There's only so many times we can tap the sign and say, this is what he does. Yeah, we called, and it's not like we're saying this after the party is finished and whatnot, and the dust is settled. We called this from the very start: escalate to de-escalate. I mean, he's done this now. Well, this year he's probably done it about 5 times, and we're only in the 22nd of January. Is what he does.
Yeah.
And okay, we're not saying we can pick exactly the moment that the markets are going to turn, but then this is why trade smaller size, have bigger stops if you're having stops. But I mean, the writing was on the card so obviously, and he's come away now with 2 things that he was obviously. Oh, sorry, are we going into this, or do you want to talk about something else first?
Well, we may as well go into it now. Why not? We may as well just cover it all off.
So he's gone into this basically with 2 things. One, because of what's happening in the Arctic Circle with Russia and China moving around there, etc. He just wants to make sure that Europe don't leave Denmark hanging out to dry. It's very cold up there. It's hard to kind of make sure you kind of, on top of things. I think there was a documentary a little while ago. It's basically some Danish troops. There's like 5 of them that go around the top of Greenland once a year or something, just make sure no one's starting building bases. I'm paraphrasing, but that's how bad it is up there. Obviously, America, the USA already has some early warning systems, outposts and what up there for missile defense, etc. So all Trump's looking to do is just remind European nations, especially Denmark, who should be protecting it, that they do have to hold up that kind of, that defense. It is a gateway into the North Atlantic up around there, that gap between Greenland, Iceland and the UK. Also, Trump wouldn't mind a few more bases up there. And, and if he can get American companies first in to mine metals and whatnot, even better. But remember one thing: those companies that are going into mine, if they do eventually start mining up there, they're not going in and pillaging and just dragging out the minerals and not paying for them. There is business involved on that, but he just wants to make sure that they're considered. And that's all he's done. And on top of this, European nations have spent, they've spent some considerable time now and said, actually, what do we do? What do we need to do to protect Greenland? What is it that Trump actually wants? What can we do to appease the US? And let's face it, if the US are sat there with a few of their bases dotted around, they're going to naturally protect it for us anyway. So Trump...
Well, this is it. He's sort of gone in a bit like a bull in a china shop, which is the way he operates, and completely changed the narrative and moved that narrative to ultimately towards what he wants, which is now where we are. And what I was going to say before we move on to sort of what might come next, just 2 points. One is, if you're trying to sort of game out how a negotiation might go, it would be really helpful if one side of that negotiation had explicitly told you how they negotiate. And that's what Trump has done. And I don't just mean now, but for the last year. Well, I was just coming on to that in a second, because you start at the very extreme end of what you want. And then that focuses minds. And then you work towards something of a middle ground where ultimately you can claim a win. And as you rightly say, Ryan, it was in his book. And I'm going to quote from it now, because not only can you look at the actions over the last year, go and read the bloody book where he writes, "My style of deal making is quite simple and straightforward. I aim very high and then I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get what I'm after."
Pushing again some more.
Hang on, there's more. Sometimes I settle for less than I sought, but in most cases, I still end up with what I want. I mean, it's his own words. It sums it up better than we can.
Again,
I'm a bit heads up about this, but if you are a market participant and you are now 13 months into the Trump presidency and you haven't worked out that this is how he does things, frankly, you need to give your head a fucking good wobble. Because this is how it works. There is no need for the hysteria. There is no need for the hyperbole and all the emotional nonsense that we've seen this week. This is just how the negotiating strategy goes. And frankly, I think it's farcical that people haven't wised up to that yet.
Well, again, tap the sign. And jokes aside, but bearing in mind the current sitting president is businessman, air quotes, but you can't deny he is a businessman. It depends on what type of businessman. It's up to you to decide. Also, one thing I just want to quickly flag: what we're saying, we are not saying we are fans of Trump. Let's be very clear on that.
No,
we're just explaining to people, explaining to you listeners what is happening and why it's working the way it's working. To be honest, it is working for Trump right now, regardless of your opinion on it. If you're sat there saying no, he's fucked up, you're not listening, and you're wearing your blue tinted glasses, because he is getting what he wants, whether you like or not. But just one thing I wanted to flag.
Sorry, just quickly on that, Ryan. Very quickly.
Go.
Frankly, it doesn't matter whether you like what he's doing or not. I don't think it's it's not how I would negotiate personally, but it's how he is negotiating.
I'll tell you what,
they are the rules of the game that we're playing.
And I might start negotiating that way.
Well, so might I now. But if you're participating in financial markets, you've got to play by the rules of the market. And they are not the ones that you set. They are the ones that the leader of the free world is setting.
Right.
And whether you think that's right or wrong, you have to go along with it. It's the same as central banks.
Yes.
I've stood here for a while now and gone, the Bank of England should be cutting aggressively and bank rates should be at 3% right now. Fine. But they're not doing that. I can't trade what I think the BOE should do. I can only trade what they are likely to do. And it's exactly the same as with these negotiations. Take the politics out of it.
Well, quite. It's so easy to say, but it's so hard for people that really are ingrained in a political leaning or whatnot, or a bias. It kills them trading wise. It really does hamper them. Just one thing to flag as well is, jokes aside, everyone talks about people, specifically people that don't like Trump, specifically talk about how, oh my God, I can't believe he's wrote a book called The Art of the Deal and stuff. I'm telling you now, if you consider trading to be something you really want to do and you want to be successful in, and Trump is the president, and you've not read his book about how he does deals, you're a fucking moron. Regardless of how poorly it's written or whatever, the fact is, the guy who's now making the big decisions wrote a book on how he makes the big decisions. You owe it to yourself to at least read through that to understand his logic. And again, Michael can't keep posting screenshots of the same pages. Read it for yourself. You may come away and say this feels like it's read by a 2-year-old, and you might be right. But the fact is, that's how he operates. So do yourself a favor, take your biases away, and if you want to succeed and you want to understand what goes on in his head, read his fucking book where he tells you what's going on in his head.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
But,
so
sorry, go on.
That's where we are. I was going to say that's where we are in terms of the negotiations. The other thing I would just say very briefly, and I've seen this doing the rounds a lot on the internet this morning, and it's wound me up, is, we don't have the details. We don't know what they've agreed. Yeah, well, we don't know what they've agreed on any of the trade deals either. The one thing let's be honest, the one thing that matters for markets is, are there going to be tariffs on the 1st of Feb? No. Is Trump going to put the US military in Greenland to invade and conquer the territory? No. The other thing, actually, Trump said in Davos yesterday, he reckons the stock market's going to double. So if you were in any doubt that there's still a Trump, then there's your evidence that it's still there. The details, frankly, don't matter to markets. The details matter if you live in Greenland. Yeah, fine. But I don't. So, for markets, the narrative's over. We can move on.
And this is it. We now move on, which brings us to our topic du jour, which is what happens next. Where does Trump pivot to next? So, as we said, we know where we are with Greenland and we don't need to go on it. Also, can you believe it's been only 19 days since Maduro was kidnapped? It genuinely feels like it could be months ago.
I've forgotten about him, to be honest.
Right? I've completely forgot until last night when I realised. Right, so now we've got the Don Rowe doctrine hit list. Where possibly could Trump pivot next year politically? First off, we've got Iran, which I'm ranking as high risk. Protests are getting crushed by the regime, but the regime is weakening. They're still getting killed, and obviously we know where Trump stands on that. He said that he will take action if the killing escalates or continues, and it definitely is. We've also got Cuba. Now, we said on the show, and I've actually mentioned it a couple of times on X and in the blog post, that Cuba could be the next thing to watch because, now that they've been cut off from Venezuela, they are very much teetering on the brink of collapse. They were already there. They were already there, but now they're just one step closer. So you've got Cuba as another one. I would say Iran, Cuba, high risk.
Just on Cuba, before you move on, there was a Wall Street Journal report overnight that they've got some sources who are saying that the US is apparently actively seeking regime change in Cuba by the end of the year. Obviously, that timeline is not fixed, and that they're apparently also looking for insiders, as the journal put it, who could cut a deal to enact that regime change and end the communist rule in Cuba. So it does look like the wheels are kind of in motion on that front.
And also, you know what? It's building that legacy, isn't it? Trump wants to be seen as the president that converts Cuba to Western world kind of thing. And also, it's one less friendly nation to Russia, China, etc. And that's all this is about. So around Cuba, obviously, we'll probably chat a little bit more about Iran because obviously that's potentially the market moving one. Panama Canal. Things are kind of starting to simmer on that one. Yesterday, Trump said sort of on the table, which read into that what you will. Obviously, you got that China/BlackRock deal pending in Panama as well. 40% of the USA, like that, did a bit of research there. 40% of US container traffic transits the canal. We know that Trump doesn't like the idea of the Chinese having any kind of leverage in that area. So again, it's just about removing Chinese hands on the wheel. Also, we've got Colombia. I would say that's de-escalated since Venezuela's actions, because I think the Cubans are like, oh, fuck, he means what he says. Mexico and Canadian borders. Now, the reason I flagged this is purely because Trump did say 2 days ago, I think it was, although it's all a bit of a blur, that in terms of drug enforcement and drug kind of, countering drugs into the US, he's now said he's looking at land borders. Now, I'm no marine biologist, but the only two land borders that the USA has is Canada and Mexico. So just something to have on the radar. At the moment, I'll say it's contained, but it's something to be aware of. And obviously in the background as well, you got the DOJ criminal probes into Powell and Cook and just Trump wanting to oust Powell. Before we talk briefly about Iran, maybe I'll let Michael take the lead though. Just one note, or one quote from Donald yesterday regarding Powell, which I think was maybe overlooked by many, where for the first time he's talking about Powell staying on after his term ends. I can't remember exact line, but I did repost it.
He said something along the lines of,
We'll
if
see.
he stays, his life won't be very happy or something.
No, there was another line that was like, we'll see about Powell and how long he stays, once his term's up or something. Something like that, which was very much against his he'll be gone before his term ends.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, it was just like, an off ramp. Trump loves a subtle off ramp so that when the time comes, he's not U-turned. So again, one to watch on that front. But go on, take it away. Where are you looking? Are you looking at anything I've mentioned? Or
I'm certainly looking at all of that. I think there's a few moving parts that aren't necessarily geopolitical that we can consider as well. Obviously, as you said, what happens with Jay Powell, what happens with Lisa Cook at the Fed. The indications for all of the legal scholars are that she came out on top in that Supreme Court argument yesterday, and that Trump is not going to be able to fire Fed governors. So how on earth does he react to that as and when a ruling is handed down? Also, sticking with the Fed, who's the next chair going to be? We still don't know. The announcement could come next week. Trump was saying yesterday that it's down to 3 or maybe 2 or maybe just 1 in his mind. So goodness only knows what's happening there. I don't think this issue of an interest rate cap on credit cards is going to go away. Trump has been talking about that for quite some time now. Yeah. Obviously, in Davos, all of the bank CEOs have come out against that move. I don't think that one's going to die because you've got this broader, what they're calling affordability focus ahead of the midterms in November. So things like this credit card rate cap, things like housing. I mean, they were meant to give a housing plan in Davos. I don't know whether that happened because there was obviously so much else going on, but I don't think it did. Also, things like food prices. There's an argument that says, actually, do we see a bit of a relaxation in some of the tariffs to try and bring down some food prices as we go into the election? So there's a lot of moving parts. I think it would probably be good to dive into them maybe on another show because we are a little bit tight for time this morning. But I think fundamentally, and you raised this point yesterday, the way to think about this and the way to kind of have this in your mind is Trump wants to be in the news. And more importantly than that, Trump wants to be running the news agenda. Yeah. So just because Greenland is solved, it doesn't mean that Trump is going to go and retire to the Oval Office and put his feet up for a week.
Let's be very pragmatic here. Not solved, but it feels like it's kind of
solved-ish.
Yeah. Like, who knows what could happen tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just important to, yes, we've had a U-turn, we've had this sort of negotiation over Greenland. What comes next? I think that now needs to be market participants' focus. And also, actually, what comes next besides Trump? Because we haven't really even spoken about it, but next week is the first Fed meeting of the year, and it's also the busiest week of Q1 earnings season. Well, so there's a lot going on. Right?
And also, yeah, exactly that. It's the perfect storm. It's all kicking off. Like I said, personally for me, as I mentioned to you and Tom yesterday on WhatsApp, I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not saying it's the most likely, but I just wouldn't be surprised if Trump's attention now turns back to Iran and again taps the sign. A strike on Iran does not automatically equal $100 oil. So what?
Oh God, no, absolutely not.
But yeah, no, real fun times currently. Fun in brackets, depends on who you are and where you are. But yeah, there's a lot going on. We certainly aren't struggling for things to talk about each morning, which is one thing I guess.
No, not at all. Right. Should we do the day ahead?
Yeah, what is going well, apart from headlines that are going to blow everything out of the water. But yeah, go on. What's on the...
I was going to say, there'll be plenty of headlines. Obviously, Trump is still in Davos. Focus today is apparently meant to be on the signing of the Charter for the Board of Peace. But a lot of people, or a lot of nations, are not wanting to sign up to that. So we'll see what exactly happens there. As for scheduled events, in about 5 minutes' time, we've got a policy decision due out in Norway. The Norges Bank should hold rates steady at 4%. And then during the remainder of the day, at 12:30 London time, we get minutes from the December ECB meeting. Very stale at this point, and with the ECB's easing cycle done, I'm not sure these minutes matter much at all. We get quite a lot of US data today. A lot of it is also very stale, though. At 1:30, we get the final read on third quarter GDP. So this is the quarter to the end of September, 4 months ago now, but it is nonetheless expected to remain unrevised at 4.3%. At the same time, we get the weekly jobless claims figures. Initial claims seen at 209,000 in the week to the 17th of Jan, up modestly from the prior 198,000. And that initial claims print does coincide with the survey week for the January jobs report. And then at 3:00 this afternoon, We get the latest personal income and spending data, including the core PCE price index. Again, hold your horses on any excitement. This is data for both October and November, and it's very safe to say that the Fed will not be setting policy based on data that old. But speaking of policy, do bear in mind that overnight we've got a policy decision due from the Bank of Japan. They should leave rates unchanged at 0.75%, although there is some chatter that we may get comments on the valuation of the yen and how that is impacting the policy outlook. And do just bear in mind we've got a few earnings on the docket today as well. Before the market open, we hear from the likes of Procter & Gamble, Freeport-McMoran and GE Aerospace. And then after the market close, we hear from Intel, who, of course, to circle back to where we started, Trump has a stake in.
Exactly that. I'll tell you what, one thing I am interested in is other companies that could be in line for a stake from Trump.
Well, we said Boeing for a while, haven't we?
Yeah, I think Boeing at some point this year might be happening. We'll see. I think the latest with Rolls-Royce, where they're kind of moving stuff over to sort Boeing out with the engine upgrades and all that stuff. Definitely something to keep an eye on. But I think. Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, if you think about it, it is what they would deem strategic companies. So the obvious ones are chips, Intel, done. Defense, which you could kind of wrap Boeing up under. Trump's also gunning for defense CEOs at the moment, by the way. That's another one we didn't mention, talking about capping their salaries, getting defense companies to stop share buybacks, all this kind of stuff. So that's another one to keep an eye on. And then the other one is obviously minerals and mining. So I think they're probably the three kind of sectors you want to look at.
My bet, there's a couple of US uranium, and the US rare earths that I personally am looking into. And also that was nicely backed yesterday. Also, disclaimer, I am long uranium. It was nice yesterday for Trump to say, we are in the era of nuclear, and they're looking to now do some kind of deal with states that will store used uranium or kind of radioactive waste. In return, the government will help them build nuclear power plants. So it's all coming together. So I think there's a lot to keep an eye on. We won't be wanting for headlines. But Michael, thank you so much as always. Huge shout out to our listeners. We've had some really good feedback on how our new style of doing the podcast is going. So thank you so much for that. Tell your friends, share the wealth, tell everyone to start listening. Yeah, whatever you're doing today, keep it tight, stay safe, stay away from February Nat Gas futures.
Yeah, do not. If there's one thing you take away from this, do not fucking touch Nat Gas.
No, exactly that. Me and Michael will see you tomorrow.